Got it.
With no further ado, Jamie Rhodes, welcome.
All right. Thank you so much for the invitation to come and talk with everybody about the Community Electricity Program. As was mentioned, my name is Jamie Rhodes. I work for Good Energy. We are a consultant that was hired by the city of Newport to develop and put together this electricity program. And I'm going to walk through it just a little bit here about how did it start, what is it accomplishing, and then the options that everybody has within the program, and then answer as many questions as we have time for here today. So once again, thank you everybody for your attention, and I'm more than happy to answer questions as we go through it. So the first thing I just want to let everybody know that the city of Newport created this program with the intention of expanding the choices we have for where we buy our electricity. Right now, most individuals get their electricity from Rhode Island Energy, and including our supply of electricity from them. But there are better options available, different options available. I'll leave the good, better, or worse to everybody's individual opinion, but there are other options available. And so the city, in creating the program, gave us two goals. One, lower rates. Can you get electricity at a lower rate than what folks currently have available? And the other one is, can we do more to address climate change using locally developed renewable energy? So those were the tasks that were put before us. And so the program, so what the program is it's called a community choice aggregation program. And the idea is to bring together the purchasers of electricity and to go out to bid, go out to a competitive market and see if we can make some competition, bring in lower rates. So there are 7 communities participating: Central Falls, Barrington, Providence, Portsmouth, Newport, South Kingstown, and Narragansett. I know you mentioned that Middletown, you didn't get a letter. Middletown and Bristol are in the process of getting their plans approved. And so they hope to move forward with the program here later this year. Now they're just a little bit behind where these first 7 communities are. And so once again, the idea here is that by bringing the demand together and going out to bid, that we can get rates that are competitive with and perhaps lower than what the utility offers, what Rhode Island Energy offers. So just as a reminder for everyone, this is just about the supply of electricity. This is not about where the poles, the wires, and all of the infrastructure come from. That is still Rhode Island Energy. So if power goes out, that's still Rhode Island Energy. Your billing still comes from Rhode Island Energy. All of the discount programs that they have and budget and billing programs that they have still all go through Rhode Island Energy. This is about just choosing the supply source of your electricity, which makes up usually just less than half of your bill is the supply, while the rest of your bill is about delivery and how electricity gets from where it's generated to your individual location. So the idea behind the program is that it's totally voluntary. Nobody has to participate. However, there is automatic enrollment for individual customers that have never left Rhode Island Energy service. The reason, well, I'll go into why it's an opt-out program in a minute, but just to remind folks that the experience from individuals is that there's no penalty for leaving the program. So if you don't want to be part of it, you can opt out at no cost. If you want to be part of it for 6 months and then leave, you can leave, once again, at no cost. You can go back to Rhode Island Energy with no fees or change fees. And you have the ability to opt out before April 8th, before the program even starts. So you can leave before it gets off the ground with, once again, no penalty, no cost to do so. And the eligible customers for the program are those that are on utility service, meaning that you haven't chosen a third-party supplier. So if you got a letter in the mail that said, hey, here's a lower rate electricity that you decided to enroll in, if you've already done that, that will still be the case. This isn't going to change that decision. This is really intended for those that have never changed the default decision, the default supply, to roll out a new option for them. As I mentioned before, the billing and maintenance, the power outages is still handled by Rhode Island Energy. We are all still customers of Rhode Island Energy. That doesn't change. As well as any folks that have solar panels on their homes or participates in like the solar programs, that doesn't change as well. Those are all still maintained. as well as anybody that receives SNAP benefits or LIHEAP, these low and moderate income discounts. All of those are not affected either. So it's just changing the supply. It's not changing any of the billing programs that are available. So one question that we get regularly is, why is this opt-out rather than an opt-in? And the answer is that if we wanted lower prices, this is how the program gets structured. In order for us to get competitive rates from suppliers, they need to know what are they bidding on. So we're trying to develop some competition. They need to know what is the potential here. An opt-out program gives them certainty of the number of customers that they're going to be supplying. And the more certainty they have, the lower prices they're able to offer. The more things that they don't know about, the higher the rates are. So we've allowed opt-in programs for about 30 years in Rhode Island, and there are 0 in place, primarily because you can't get a better rate. So if we wanted to lower prices, we needed to change the way that we buy electricity. This was authorized by the General Assembly back in 2017, and the Newport City Council in December of 2021 actually voted to permit it to be an opt-out program. All right. So hopefully you can see this. It should be similar to what was mailed to you in the letters that you got. And I should have jumped this right up to the beginning. I buried the lead here. So what is the program delivering here? So at launch, the Community Electricity Program will be providing a electricity supply rate of 9.361 cents. It's there on the left of my screen. Hopefully it's on that helps with where you are seeing it too. So what happens if you do nothing, you don't opt out of the program and you just let what happens, is that will be the rate you'll pay for electricity, the 9.361 cents. If you opt out and stay with Rhode Island Energy, they will be charging 10.341 cents per kilowatt hour. So what we've been able to do is lower the price of electricity by just about 1 cent per kilowatt hour. To give a sense of how many kilowatt hours, if you have a bill with you, you'll be able to see it. It's on there. If not, the general sense is like an average single family home uses about 500 kilowatts per month. And so give that as kind of a baseline of whether you're likely to be more or less than that. So there are 4 products that are being offered in the program, and that individuals can choose any one of them, including going back to Rhode Island Energy's last resort service. So there's the standard, which is the default. This is the one that folks are going to be automatically enrolled in. The state minimum right now is that all electricity supply has to have 23%. I know it's lots of numbers here, but 23% comes from renewable sources. The standard product bumps that up to 28%. So there's 5% more renewable energy in the standard product than in the Rhode Island Energy's last resort service. We can see there's also 3 other products which change the amount of renewable energy. So the basic product, which has the lowest price, adds no additional renewables. The 50%, which goes up a little bit but stays below Rhode Island Energy, means half of your electricity will come from renewable sources. And then the 100% product, which is not quite 2 cents more expensive, is 100% renewable. So the basic, the 50, and the 100 are all optional. You can choose to go into them if you want, but you will not be automatically enrolled into them. The Newport standard is the one that is the price that you will get if you choose to do nothing, beginning in May of 2023. And just a note about timing here is the rate being offered here goes from May until November, meaning that come November, the rate is going to change. Just like Rhode Island Energy's rate changes every 6 months, the program's rate is changing on a similar timeline. It's just happening 1 month after Rhode Island Energy's rates change. So they're staggered by just a little bit here. So I just wanted to let everybody know that come April, the Rhode Island Energy's service rate is going to change. So it's going from 17.7 cents down to this 10.3 cents come April. And then if you stay in the program, it'll go down once again to the 9.3 cents in May. So as I said, the program is launching in May, meaning that when you get your the beginning at your May bill is when you'll start seeing this program. So the March bills and April bills, you will not see the program in, it will not be in effect. But we're doing all this pre-program launch communications to make sure folks know that it's happening and can choose whether they want to participate or not. So the first thing you probably received was a postcard. The postcard would let people know that an important letter was coming. We definitely got some calls saying this postcard is coming and saying that there's important information, but doesn't give us any information on it. The goal was for the letter to land 2 or 3 days later, which was about the timing that we were able to accomplish, which gave all the details of the program, including how you can leave the program or what the options were to stay in. There have been press releases done. So I think I've done an interview with every paper in the state at this point and most of the news channels as well. So you've either probably seen my face or read about my comments in the local media. But we wanted to make sure that it was being communicated to the public through the media outlets and allow reporters to investigate the program as well. We've done a fair amount of electronic communications. That's ads in local papers, social media work. And then just like this, I have generally 3 to 4 nights a week have been doing public meetings across the state where I've had a chance to answer people's questions about the program. And the idea here is still, once again, but by the time we get to May, that everybody that has questions about the program, hopefully will have an opportunity to have it answered. So yeah, we're just almost done here with the presentation. One thing that we're trying to remind everybody is that, like, no, this is not a scam. This is a real program. It's approved and created by the city of Newport. If you have questions about the program, NextEra Energy Services was the company that was brought on board as a vendor to provide the actual electricity supply to the program. As part of that, they pulled together a call center to serve the 7 communities that are launching it. And so the 877-323-3049 number goes directly to them. My experience and what I've heard from others is that there's one menu to choose your language, and then it goes directly to a customer support specialist to help you out. That individual can help you choose between options in the program, as well as they can help you opt out of the program if you choose to do so. With the mail, you also received a card so that you could mail back an opt-out card. All you have to do is sign it, mail it back, no postage necessary, as long as you use the envelope that was provided. And that will also opt you out of the program. If you do not want to opt out of the program, you don't have to do any of these things. And then you will get the benefit of the program beginning in May. We did set up a website, newportcommunityelectricity.com. On there, you can find all the information I provided here, plus additional questions that folks have had. I did a similar presentation before the city council last Wednesday that they recorded it and they put it up there. So you can see the questions that members of the public as well as the council members had. So you can go to the website to either learn more information about the program and the details of it. You can also opt out on the website by filling out the opt-out form that's there. And if you prefer not to communicate with anybody in the program or part of the city's website, you're free to contact Rhode Island Energy directly, and they can opt you out of the program as well. So if your preference is not to connect with the program in any way, you can contact the utility and they can help you stay out of the program as well, if that's your choice. All right, so that's the end. I'm going to keep this up. This tends to have the information that folks want to have here. Before we go into questions, I did just want to note that the letter, when it was sent out, had a different number under Rhode Island Energy's last resort service. At the moment of explanation there, we had a printing deadline to get the letters out, and the number we printed on there, which was, I believe it was 9.76 cents, was what Rhode Island Energy had proposed in January. Since January, they have changed their proposal, and then 10.34 cents is what is now their proposal. That is expected to be finalized on Wednesday when the Public Utility Commission votes. So just want to give everybody a heads up that yes, though we said 9.7 in the letter, it did turn out that Rhode Island Energy raised its proposal between when we published the letter and today. So I've tried to keep this this chart up to help people see that that change has been made. All right, and with that,
Jamie, can you hear me?
I can.
All right, we do have a question in the chat, so I'm going to start with that, and then we'll open it up to the folks who are here. The question in the chat is, what determines the rate changes?
So there's 2 potential questions you're asking there, so I'm going to answer both since I'm not quite sure. So if we're looking here about the 4 different rates, the difference between these rates is simply the amount of renewable energy. So if the question was, why is the rate changing between the products? It's based on the amount of renewable energy that's contained in it. However, if your question is, what why or what will cause or what will determine the rate changes when the rates change in November? The answer to that is NextEra Energy, to support the program, is currently buying the electricity needed to serve the program coming in November. And so the question comes is, what price do they get to buy it at now? And how much of that? And then when that adds up to November, we'll be publishing the rates at least 30 days beforehand so that folks know that when we've done all the purchasing over the course of about 9 months to serve the program, what was the total rate? What was the final rate we're able to land on? So what determines the rate change is generally what's the price of electricity out in the market. And the difference between us and Rhode Island Energy is based on, are we able to use our advantages to buy electricity better? And by better, I mean at a more cheap rate than what Rhode Island Energy is able to do so. So that kind of walks through the potential questions you'd be answering there.
Any questions from the floor? Yes, sir.
There seems to be a significant emphasis on the opt-out process. What percentage of people have currently opted out, and at what point does the number of people who have opted out impact the price of the electricity?
Did you hear that, Jamie?
I caught most of it. Could you repeat it though, just so I can make sure I got it all?
So what he would like to know is what the percentage of folks who have currently opted out is, because there seems to be a lot of emphasis on the opting out piece. So what was the other half of the question, sir? What was the percentage of folks opting out?
At what point does the people opted out impact the price?
At what point does the number of people who have opted out impact the furthering of the program?
Got it. So
Price.
I don't have updated numbers as of over the weekend for the number of folks that have opted out. And I would almost say when we get through the opt-out period, which goes through April 8th, we're going to come back and let folks know, report to the councils and the like of the total number of people that have opted out of the program. I could go back and get the number now, but it's going to change between now and the end of the opt-out period. So it's tentative. Our general expectation is that when we've launched similar programs in Massachusetts and Illinois and New Hampshire, we generally see that of the eligible customers, about 25% opt out. So about a quarter of folks that are eligible to choose to opt out for a variety of reasons. We have anecdotal evidence of why people opt out, but everybody does it for their own individual choice. And we'll be providing regular updates on that opt out level to the municipalities or to the city when we report at least quarterly to them. As far as the number of people in the program that would impact the rates, the answer to that is it actually is independent of the number of people that opt out. What we've been able to do is that negotiate with NextEra Energy, the supplier, in order for them to set this rate as a stable rate for the first 6 months. Then once we have the opt-out numbers, they're going to then purchase electricity for future rates based off of the enrollment in it. So folks are, so right now they guaranteed this lower rate for the first 6 months independent of the opt-out rates. And then they're going to tailor their purchasing to match the actual program enrollment for subsequent rates. So the idea behind that is to make sure that while they know they're going to have a significant number of customers in it, that the rate setting could be independent of a specific enrollment target. And just for the first piece, the reason why we want to let people know about the opt-out provision is that we recognize that it being an opt-in or an opt-out program means that there are going to be a fair number of people whose decision is being made for you for your electricity supply. And so we want to remind folks that it is voluntary and that they can opt out of the program if they choose for whatever reason that they have, just as a way to kind of balance that decision that the council made on behalf of its residents.
I have a question from the chat and then we'll go back to the floor.
Yeah.
Let's see. What are the actual energy sources for this program?
Yeah, so I'm going to try not to get too far in the weeds on our how our grid works, but the basis of the electricity is what comes from what's called the system mix. This is just the mix of sources that serve the entire New England region. So there's natural gas, some coal, oil on really cold days, hydropower, wind and solar, some biomass, the burning of wood and the like, landfill gas from out in Johnston. All of those guys get pulled together. And then what the grid does is make sure that there's enough of those generators on to meet the demand at every given moment of the day. So we're not able to fully track at an individual moment where your electricity is coming from. So what's done is essentially like at the end of the year, we go back and we average out. This is what your sources of electricity generally were. And that's called the system. Now for the renewables themselves, for the renewable portion of it itself, the first 23% of it, the state minimum, is being sourced by NextEra just on the open renewable energy market. So that's going to be a mix of, some offshore wind. It'll be a lot more offshore wind when the offshore wind projects get online. But then there's also a lot from ground mounted solar. There's some wind turbines across the region. So it's coming from all of these generators across the region. All of the voluntary renewables that we purchase are being sourced through a local organization called Green Energy Consumers Alliance. They buy renewable energy certificates from specifically local projects. So like the Narragansett Bay Commission has turbines out in Coventry and in Providence. There's a solar turbine out in a solar facility on West Greenwich. There's the capped landfill in East Providence that has a solar field on top of it. So we're able to purchase all of our voluntary renewables, what we do above and beyond the minimum, from these local projects in order to support our local renewable energy economy through that voluntary purchases. So I guess that's a way to say that with your question of where exactly does the electricity come from is actually a three-part answer. There's the mix for our base electricity. There's the broad renewable market of all renewables that come into New England. And then for the voluntary, we're able to source it straight from Rhode Island projects.
So you had a question?
Yeah, you indicated that Rhode Island Energy updates their rates in September.
You indicate, I'm going to take it piece by piece then. Jamie, you indicated that the rates are updated in September?
Yep.
So should we expect the basic rate to always be lower than Rhode Island Energy?
Should we expect that the basic rate will always be lower than Rhode Island Energy? That's the hot question, Jamie.
That is the hot question. Yeah, that's the one. And so I'm not going to promise something I can't deliver. So I'll say that we cannot guarantee that it will be lower than Rhode Island Energy at every 6 months. But what I can also describe is there are some pieces we put into place to make it so that we have a system in place to deliver lower rates. And what I mean by that is there's two key things that we've been able to do with the program. One is that we've been able to disconnect our energy supplier, NextEra Energy's profit from the rates. So whether it's a high rate or a low rate, they make the same amount of money. So the idea is that they don't have an incentive to raise the rates on us for any of their own benefit, that if the rates are going up, it's because the hard costs are going up of those rates. So that is one piece to make sure that our suppliers, the vendors that we're working with, have no incentive to raise the rates. The other piece is when we buy electricity. Right now, when Rhode Island Energy buys electricity to create its rate, it does so on 4 specific days of the year. The days are known in advance. They're approved by the Public Utilities Commission, which means that when they go out to buy, everybody who's going to sell them electricity knows exactly when it's going to be and knows that they have no choice but to purchase that day. So what you see happens is that prices go up when you have a buyer that can't choose not to buy that day. So what we choose to do in the program is not buy them. If the prices are going up because the utility is buying, then why don't we just buy on a different day? And so what we tend to find is that there are these mini drops in the market around when the utility buys, so long as you don't buy at the same time. And the idea is that match when we buy electricity to the same rough time period when Rhode Island Energy does, but not the same date, not the same exact date, not the same exact time, so that we can take advantage of the market drops while they have to suffer the market peaks. And so these two moving parts of one, separating our vendors' profits from the rate structure, from the actual rate, and strategic buying times means that while we are in the same market as Rhode Island Energy, we're actually using our experience to say, There are these little pieces of advantages, and the more times we buy, the more those advantages add up, such that while the current rate was done through 3 procurements, the November rate will be done through 4 procurements. The idea is by the time we get to spring of next year, we'll have at least 6 procurements against Rhode Island Energy where we can layer these benefits against them and bring in lower rates. So that being said, we have had programs that have been higher than utility service for individual 6-month periods, but every one of the agreements we've worked with throughout Massachusetts and Illinois has saved over the course of the entire program.
Jamie, can you see the chat?
Yes, let me just pull that up.
Okay, I'm going to scroll it up a little. I want you to see what the rate is.
The charges. So yes,
Yeah.
Rhode Island Energy charges that the 17.785 cents per kilowatt hour is the rate through through March 31st. So on April 1st, that rate will drop to the 10.341 cents. So just want to make sure everybody's got the same information. And then once again, that comes in April, and then in May, the rate would drop it to the 9.361 cents. Why would anyone opt out? Mostly folks have opted out because they are just opposed to the program happening in general. As in the opt-out provision means that folks are being enrolled in the program without us going and asking for consent from each person. So some people opt out because they just don't like that the program operates that way. And I respect that decision. There's no doubt about it. However, once again, as I said before, the fact that it is structured that way is why we got a rate a cent cheaper than Rhode Island Energy. And some folks, once again, just to speak to some of the news that's been out there, NextEra Energy Services, their parent company owns a utility in another state. That utility has had some bad press for utility disconnects, political they have a PAC that makes political contributions. So there's definitely some folks that I've talked to in other cities that are choosing to opt out because the supplier that's chosen is in the news in Florida for the actions of a subsidiary. Once again, I feel that that's a perfectly fine expression of political position. It's totally, if you want to opt out of the program because you don't like the vendor, by all means, please do so. I would just say, I've said this everywhere else because I feel like I just have to be honest, intellectually honest with it, is that NextEra Energy is also a supplier to last resort service. Rhode Island Energy doesn't actually generate the electricity. They buy it from electricity suppliers, just like we are. And NextEra Energy is one of their suppliers, both currently and will be in April. So if it is a political reason to stay away from NextEra Energy, I just encourage you to go find a third option, because otherwise you're working with NextEra in our program and with last resort service.
One thing, how long is this contract that these communities have with Good Energy?
How long is this contract with Good Energy that the communities have?
Yeah, so with us, Good Energy, the contract's at will. So we're the consultant to the city until the city says they don't want our services anymore. There's no fee or cost or anything like that to terminate working with Good Energy as well. It would just be, hey, we don't want to work with you anymore. That being said, with NextEra Energy, who is providing the electricity to the program, our agreement with them is for 5 years to run the program, and then we can either rebid the program and choose another supplier. We could extend with NextEra, or the city could cancel the program altogether, but they get to kind of do an evaluation after 5 years.
Did you have a part B to that?
It's on the letter that Good Energy, I don't want to say has a take of it, but they do. We'll use the term fee, which is everybody uses the word fee. So you have a fee.
So you have a fee, he's stating, Jamie,
Per
Yes.
kilowatt.
per kilowatt.
The customers make sure it's not active. City of Newport's not paying for the residents. Is that tied into a time frame also?
Is the fee that is handed down to the residents for Good Energy on a time frame as well?
Yeah, so our fee, and we put it in the letter, is that within that 9.361, that one at the very end, that's a fee that goes to Good Energy as a consultant. And that stands for and that's paid to us by the supplier. It's not paid to us by the city. And so it only comes in for, we only get paid that for the kilowatt hours purchased through and that goes for the duration of the project, for the contract with NextEra.
Next question, Penny?
If a customer opts out at a later time, are they allowed to opt back in?
Yeah, this has come up a lot. If a customer opts out at a later time, are they able to opt in? So Jamie, the
Yes.
broader question, how revolving is the door with regards to this program for people coming in and out?
Yeah, so yes, for residential and commercial folks, there's a different rule for industrial. So if you own a manufacturing facility that's using, 1,000 or 5,000 times the amount of electricity as an individual, there's a different set of rules for them. But for residents and commercial accounts, you can opt out now, you can opt out later, you can stay in the program for a while and then opt out. You can do all of these things, and at no time will there be a fee charged to you to leave or enter the program. But yeah, the idea is that the program is there for the benefit of the community for the duration of it. Yes, and then if you want, I can go into the industrial customers, but there's one little caveat in
Yeah,
there
there's no one here who's in the industrial,
okay. Then I'll
except
leave
for
that
me, Jamie, but I'll talk to you about that later.
Okay.
Yes, in the back.
Is the majority of the people in, say, Newport opt out?
What happens if the majority of people in Newport opt out? I think this leads back to our first question.
Yeah, the program will still go for that period for these 5 months or 6 months. I'm sorry, this will be the rate for those that choose to stay in the program. It could, if almost everybody opts out, it could impact our ability to get competitive rates in the future. But what we expect is that since we're working with 7 other communities, that amongst all of us, we'll have enough buying power in order to get competitive rates. But yeah, the idea was that the program would exist regardless, even if 70–80% of the city opted out, the program would still be available.
Yes,
Seems strange to me that if you're being offered this electricity at a lower rate, that people would in fact choose to opt out. Are we at some stage going to be given a breakdown of the reasons people opting out? It's almost as if something's being hidden.
so the opting out piece feels a little wonky to the folks. I'm going to translate. Feels a little wonky to the folks within the community that, and this leads back to what he had originally asked, that there's so much being put on the opt-out piece. Will there be an opportunity for folks to understand why folks have chosen to opt out? So in other words, when they opt out, is there an additional question of why they chose to opt out? Will there be any reporting with regards to that?
No, we have chosen not to gather that information because we wanted to make it as easy as possible for somebody to do so. And that while I have a business interest here, that I would really like to have that information. I have been constantly told, like, yes, I know how much you want it and how valuable it would be. It's still arguably inappropriate to ask. If we wanted to commission a survey later of people that have opted out to gather that, we could do so, but we didn't want to actually use the opt-out process in order to just help our business when the goal was to help somebody make an informed choice. Though I am really curious, to be very clear.
Last week, spoke to a young man from Michigan who's with the nonprofit.
This gentleman opted out last week. He spoke to a young man from Michigan with a nonprofit.
With I assume is this Rhode Island, whatever. That's
With Good Energy?
Yes.
Okay.
That's where you from. I'm from Michigan. I don't know if you just working home. Pretty on, very nice conversation.
Yeah.
So that being said, I said, he asked, so I did have an exit interview. Can I ask you, Mr. Martin, why you opted out?
He was asked during this interview on the phone.
So I was glad to say one thing, I don't like government or whoever coming into
Yeah.
my home, pay my taxes.
He did tell him that he didn't like government coming into his home, telling him,
It is money out now.
yeah.
People are gonna forget about this and something happened. But in any event, that being said, so he did ask me. He was also curious. I said, well, what about this fee? What fee? We're a nonprofit. We can't charge a fee.
So the gentleman had said he had asked him, what about the fee? This is the same gentleman who asked you about the fee a moment ago. And the young man that he spoke to said, what fee? We're a not-for-profit. We can't charge you a fee.
So he researched it. He did pull up the letter that residents of Newport received. And on the back, that second sentence in does say, this and that the program is with Good Energy, and then it showed that written. You know,
Right.
that one percentage of a cent or whatever it is.
Together, they did read the back of the letter that does state about that one.
So I guess the other question is, how far in is good energy? Are you the third party, fourth party?
He'd like to know how far in is good energy. Are you the third party, the fourth party?
I'm confident, I guess, okay, they were putting this program together, no good energy is taking a piece of the pie, which is, you know, your fee for doing this. But where is this nonprofit?
He'd like to know on the organizational chart, Jamie, exactly where good energy fits.
So yeah, the program organizational chart starts with the city council, that they're the ultimate decision makers of the program. They authorize it through vote. And they're also the ones that can change the parameters of the program. They've delegated a fair amount of authority to the town or to the city manager, to Joe Nicholson, in order to actually facilitate the program on a day-to-day basis. We report directly to him with the planning department in, because Trish Reynolds in the planning department plays a significant role, as well as staff for the city manager. And Good Energy specific role has been to work with the suppliers directly, help negotiate the contracts for the program. We also ran the multi-municipal bid that led to the selection of NextEra Energy. And we've done all of that at the direction of either the city manager or the city council, depending on who I've presented to. And within that, when we selected NextEra Energy has an individual agreement with the city of Newport, has an individual agreement with each of the other municipalities as well. And so they're supplying everybody, while collectively we're working together, there are separate agreements between each city or town and NextEra. Same thing that the agreement with Good Energy with each one of the communities is separate. So each community can move in its own way. They can terminate the programs as they see fit. They're not tied to what other communities do. And so NextEra then serves as the supplier to the program. So they're a vendor for them. While we serve as a consultant, our goal and our job is to provide honest, accurate, and make accurate information to the city, as well as the recommendations based off of our experience in the program. So Good Energy, while we monitor the contract with NextEra, ultimately it would be the city that if anything comes up that would take action. If there was bankruptcy or something unforeseen happens, that would still be negotiated between the city and the vendor. And our goal is to help, once again, provide information and experience when it comes to that. When it came to the development approval of the program, we did a lot of the legwork of the research, the drafting, the writing, and the presenting of it. The city made the key decisions around renewables, as well as the selection of the supplier. And what was I going to say? Oh, and then just and I also worked with the city solicitors, the city and town solicitors in each community, to have our programs reviewed by the Public Utilities Commission. So I did a lot of the heavy legal work for it, while the city solicitors got a chance to make the strategic decisions. I was the guy who wrote all the stuff and did all the hearings, but they got to make the decision of which direction we go. So that's kind of like the organizational chart. It starts with the city government. We work for them, and then we contracted with NextEra to provide the necessary service. And then our job is to make sure we monitor that and report back to the city. We'll be probably reporting to the council quarterly about the results of the program, how much money was saved, what was our renewable energy impact, how many people are in the program. And that way the city can make recommendations about how to improve the program over time.
Yes, Judy.
I may have missed this. Who approached who? Good Energy approached Newport, or did Newport approach Good Energy?
She'd like to know who approached whom. Did Good Energy approach Newport, or was it the other way around?
Yeah, it was the summer of 2019, which was about 2 years after the programs were allowed. I went essentially town to town, city to city, and said, hey, this is a program that's been effective in Massachusetts. Are you interested? And at that point, I worked with communities that wanted to move forward in meeting with their staff, as well as presenting to the various city or town councils in each one before they decided to move forward.
Jamie, if we could go to the chat for a moment. For solar customers, how will performance-based incentives be calculated and distributed to those customers?
Yes, so for the solar customers, there's two main programs, either a net metering program or the performance-based incentives here. which is another way of saying the Renewable Energy Growth Program. In both of those, the value you get for what you generate from your solar panels is tied to, you get, the value of it is based off of last resort service. So it's going to be based off of the 10.341 cents that you have there. So that's the value of what you generate. When you sell it back to the grid, that's the rate that you'll get. Plus, depending on which program is, there's other additional factors that add on to that. So that's the base value. Now for the electricity that you use, but you don't generate, you get that at the program rate. So while while you sell the electricity at the last resort service rate, you can buy electricity at the lower program rate.
Thank you. Yes.
Since this was approved in December 2021, is there any reason why there was more advertising or the community wasn't given more of a heads up that this was coming?
We heard a lot of,
Quite a surprise.
we heard a lot of this, Jamie. The approval happened in 2021. It is now 2023, and many folks in the community feel like they were kind of surprised by this all of a sudden that came down. You know, it was a bit of a deluge to some folks, even though the decision had been made a couple of years ago. Could you answer to that?
Yeah, so there before, what I can describe as what we did during the process. So prior to the program being approved in December of 2021, the plan was both drafted and published for public comment. We put notice in the newspapers and out on social media that the plan was up and that there was a public hearing involved. We did have a public hearing in front of the Newport Council. I was there for about, I want to say, an hour to an hour and a half answering questions from both the council and the public. Following the council's approval of the program, it went to the Public Utilities Commission, where they held a second public hearing that they noticed both in the local papers and through their media channels, their Twitter, their social media. Not my expertise there, but that's where they put out the information. And then they responded to public questions at that point. What happened after that is, after that point, we came back to the council. We came back to the council after we did the bidding process, and had on a normal agenda that the selection of a vendor, of an electricity supplier, was in the works, and to seek approval to enter a contract with them. So that was also put out on the agenda and done in a public meeting as well. And what we have found, and this is a inadequate answer to the question, but I'll say it anyway, is that when we've tried to do notices like this prior to there being a specific rate, it's generally ignored because it would be a letter like, hey, there's an electricity thing happening. The first question someone asks is like, okay, well, what's the rates, or like, what's the program? And there's no answer for that until the rate is actually getting published. So what we do is that as soon as the rate is there, that 9.361 cents and everything, as soon as the rate's available, we mail it to everybody. And we go, now is the time that there's a decision in front of folks. And now is the moment where the notice is going to be most effective, because it leads to somebody to make a decision in the roughly 5 weeks that they have. And so that's why we put, as soon as the information was available, we did the mailings, we've scheduled the community meetings in order to answer folks' questions. Prior to that, this is just what we found, is that the more notice that we put out beforehand, it doesn't gather interest in the questions that are being raised here. But once we have these rates and the opt-out period is in front of us, there's a lot of interest in answering and asking the questions. And so our experience has just been this is when the public is both aware of the program and has an opportunity to engage with it. And so that's when we need to be delivering the information. And that doing so 6 months ago would have been of limited value.
Yes, Miriam.
If the customer decides to opt out, then decides to opt back in, physically, what do you have to do?
That's a very good question. If
Yeah.
a customer has decided to opt out and then wants to opt in, what is the process to do that?
Yeah, it's the same process that you opt out is the same one to opt in. So you can call the customer support line, which I'll bring back up here. It's at 877-323-3049. They can opt you back into the program after you've opted out. You can also do it on the website, the newportcommunityelectricity.com. You can opt in there once you've left the program. And the last piece is that if you call the town hall, they'll probably also be able to direct you to the phone number that's here, and they'll be able to get you to the customer support representative.
Jamie, will further communications with the public happen through their electric bills from Good Energy? How will future residents or even folks that, you know, that don't engage, say in this year, for example, but, you know, would have the opportunity a year from now?
Yes. Yeah. So
How would they engage?
So what we're going to be doing is that when the rates are coming out again in 6 months, we're going to be doing the press releases, the notice in town halls, presentation to the town councils. I expect I'll be doing a lot more of these public meetings as well to answer questions about the program. But the idea is, once again, about 30 days before the price would go into effect, we'll be noticing folks through those channels. We haven't committed to mailing to everybody a second time because the cost of mailing gets folded into the rates. So it's a balance of letting everybody know the price change versus charging us all more money in order for the mail to go out. So we're exploring some ways with Rhode Island Energy to get a notice in the bill that way, and exploring some other options that the city might have to get information to people more directly. But right now, it'll probably be through the same ways that Rhode Island Energy communicates its price changes, which is the press releases, the social media, and then we're going to add on to that presentations to the town councils, direction they give us to community groups to reach out to other folks, to like newsletters to put the information into as we continue to learn about the different channels. So our idea is to get out there again over the next month and let people know what the change is going to be.
Yes, Rick.
I still believe in using the postal service. Will the bills always be offered through the mail? And when you do come up to the point where you're going to be changing the rates either higher or even verification lower, will all the comparative rates be available as you did this month, so that we can make a decision based on the bill that you sent? Your rates will be there, and the other options will also be on the bills.
Let's see if I can do this right. So this fine gentleman still believes in snail mail, as do many folks, although I've been rather angry with USPS lately. But what he would like to know is kind of on the tail of the question that I had asked as well. As time goes on, will there be an opportunity through the Rhode Island Energy bills that we all get in the mail? First of all, will it stay in the mail? And secondly, will there be an opportunity for price comparison that comes in that mailing?
So for the first question is yes, the bills will still go out by mail unless if you've chosen paperless delivery, you will still get paperless delivery. For those that have opted to still have paper delivery of their mails, of their bills, they will still get paper delivery of their bills. So the goal as a program is not to change the billing structure, is that you'll still receive your bill from Rhode Island Energy and you'll still pay your bill to Rhode Island Energy, even when you participate in the program. To the other piece is really, I can't make a commitment to it. The city didn't direct us to absolutely put it into the bill because we were getting the pricing of it and it was expensive. And so that's why we're trying to explore other programs. If we can get a good rate with Rhode Island Energy to insert a bill insert, we would absolutely do so. The other counter to that was that for folks that don't receive paper bills, we have found that the readership of the bill inserts is almost nothing, but we still have to pay to get it into the digital bill inserts. So you can see there's like 7 factors at play here of trying to balance not costing us all more money for something that have a limited value, but also how do we get the notice out as directly as possible. So it is a question that continues to come up, and I suspect the council will give us a direction on it before the 6 months is up. Though it is definitely a question of like just balancing the priorities there of cost versus of return.
Jamie, is the calendar the same for all of the communities? One band, one sound, everybody's on the same calendar?
All 7 are on the same calendar.
Okay. Another question, yes.
Is
Sierra's relationship with Florida Power? What is that relationship?
She would like to know if there's a relationship with Florida Power and Light.
Yes, so the
Yeah.
company that we are, oh, did I cut off a piece?
I'm sorry?
Oh, did I cut somebody off?
No, not at all. Go ahead.
So the company that we're working with, NextEra Energy Services, is owned by the same parent company as Florida Power and Light, the utility in Florida. So the company we're working with is owned by the same parent company as the utility, or as Florida Power and Light.
Any other questions, folks? Yes, Miriam.
I know a lot of people are concerned about their political affiliation. Could you expand on that a bit?
A lot of folks are concerned about the political affiliation of Good Energy, Mary Ellen? Yes, could you expand on that, Jamie?
Sure. And I apologize there. I accidentally closed the screen share and closed the whole thing. So hopefully I could put up the rates again in a minute, but I'll try to answer the last question.
No, I think you're good now. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So Good Energy, to my knowledge, that's a consulting group that I work with. I don't know if our company has a political affiliation yes, everybody who works here has their own political beliefs, some of which I agree with, some of which I don't. It's an interesting, fun place to work. But we don't have a political action committee. We don't have a history of making any sort of political contributions to candidates, either in Rhode Island or any other state that we operate in. At the same time, we have no investments with or financial relationships with the suppliers that bid onto the programs. We wanted to make sure that we don't have a conflict of interest when trying to provide advice and knowledge to our municipal clients. So Good Energy doesn't we don't have a history of political. Yes, you can look up my own political record. Like you can find me. I have made political contributions. You can find those, but I'm not going to give Good Energy and say Good Energy's political affiliations are the same as my own personal giving. I think there's a line there. NextEra Energy does have a political action committee that does engage in the political process. What we have done, we had a researcher go back and look at, can you compile their political contributions? Let us know, how does it break down? Is it partisan giving? Is it something else? So that we could answer these questions effectively. And I'm not here to defend NextEra. And if you don't like NextEra, I just encourage you to opt out of the program because I'm not here, once again, I'm not here to defend them. They are a vendor to us. We asked them to provide a service and they're providing that service, and that's what we wanted. Their political action committee has donated to members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, primarily ones that chair or sit on the energy committees. Unsurprisingly, their political giving tracks their financial interest. They give to candidates and elected officials that oversee and pass bills, laws that impact their business. There's nothing, I would say there's nothing new there. Within Florida Power and Light, their CEO their particular CEO was a big supporter of Ron DeSantis, had given political contributions to Governor DeSantis, and had also engaged in what I would call some underhanded political action work, personally funding some dark money groups that were supporting Ron DeSantis. But that's, once again, that was the CEO of a company that did that. I don't know if that means that everybody in the company agrees with him. He was also fired afterwards, so there's that. But yes, there is a longstanding connection between the Florida Power and Light as a utility and the sitting governor of that state, which is very much the connection you see with utilities and governors. Rhode Island Energy and National Grid before them had some close financial or political connections with Raimondo and McKee in the same way, because, well, they're the ones regulating their business. And so you tend to get in good with them. So that's just kind of a breakdown is the connections with Florida Power and Light are very much around that CEO and Governor DeSantis. The parent company itself has a political action committee and gives to members of Congress that oversee their business. And to my knowledge, in the research we've done, there haven't been any connections in Rhode Island or political giving in Rhode Island. That could change in the next quarter. I don't know. And then once again, back to Good Energy. I have not seen the company I work for have political leanings in that way or seek to engage in the political process that way beyond us as individual employees.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah.
With no further questions from the floor and no further questions from the chat, Our hour is now up. Jamie, we'd like to thank you for taking this time to spend with us today. I'm sure there'll be more questions, and if there is anything, may I count on you to be able to send an email your way every once in a while?
Yep, send it along and I'll get back to you as quick as I can.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye, Jamie.
We have-